Okay, so the true story behind "In the Air Tonight" by Phil Collins. I will then be watching this guy. This guy is everything Phil Collins. What a YouTube name! So I will be watching him and watching this video right here to give me more insight about what that song is all about. Because my earliest memory of that song and why I knew of that song, it's because of the song by Eminem called "Stan," where he was explaining the song in he was explaining the Phil Collins song in Stan. But then when I did the official reaction to that song, a lot of you guys told me that it wasn't the right description of that song. And after that, it has been years before I visited that song once more. So now I'm going back. I will now listen to the true story behind it and give my opinion or give my real reaction to it. So let's go.
Genesis, and now so Phil checks into his hotel room. It's late at night. It's just after a gig with Genesis somewhere in New York City in the late 70s. Phil's hotel room has a window that faces the parking lot. Phil goes to look out the window and sees two men in the parking lot having an argument. One of those men has a gun, takes it out, and shoots the other man dead. Phil witnesses all of this happening. The murderer looks around and then looks straight up into Phil's window. They make eye contact, and Phil says, "I saw what you did." The window was open so the man could hear him. "I saw it with my own two eyes." Okay, so today we're going to talk. That didn't happen.
Oh my God!
Tonight and the various urban legends around the song.
Oh my God, he got me good.
Phil Collins' first solo album. He had just released Duke with Genesis, and now he's going out on his own doing a solo.
I need to react more of Genesis.
Urban legends that get attached to this song. I don't know why. It's a very ominous song, and it was a very special song for Phil because it was a new genre. It was a new genre for him, but for pop music at the time, it was a new genre. It was just. It's an odd tune, but it's very dark and scary and ominous, and it works well in TV shows and soundtracks and in movies. So that's why we hear it all the time. The song really kind of does demand a bit of a story, doesn't it? And we're going to talk about the true meaning of this song.
Okay.
But here's what I want to do today in today's episodes. I want to talk about the various legends. I have that story that I just mentioned is a story that I heard when I was 8 years old. That was the first legend.
Okay.
My parents were talking, and somebody actually was telling them that story as if it were true, and that was like the going story. There was no internet. You couldn't validate this. Phil got a word in. It was whatever the rumor was spreading at the time.
Exactly.
So we're going to talk about all the different legends that I could find, and I want you to share the legends that I found.
Let me get cozy.
We're going to talk about the Top of the Pops incident with the paint bucket. We're going to really dive into that for a second. Then we're going to look at what Phil says in his biography, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of improvisation and mumble lyrics and where the actual origin of this song came from. So here are some of the legends that I found from this, that I found online, that various legends that swirled around there. And so you can tell me if you had heard any of these before. I'm very curious. So there was one I just told you, shooting in the alley behind his hotel. So he's on tour, presumably New York City, something, or Chicago, something.
Oh, wait.
Late 70s.
Wait. Isn't that the story that Eminem was describing in his song? In the air, the night of the man that tried to save that other man from drowning, but didn't. No, that's okay. So that's another description. So that's the only legend I heard. I hope that he will also include that in the legends that he heard. So let's go.
It has to be, obviously, and he witnessed this murder take place in the back alley. Now, you would think, honestly, like, call the police, right? Doesn't matter what time it is. Doesn't matter your celebrity.
Yeah,
you don't whip out a Prophet synthesizer and write a song about it. You call the police. And so anyway, then there was this other story about a man drowning and Phil couldn't save him. And this happened when he was a young boy. Another story of a man drowning and Phil saw someone witness this drowning. So this guy had a friend who was drowning, and the friend couldn't help the guy drowning, and Phil was from afar and saw this take place. Then there's this like story that Phil hired a private investigator to find that guy who couldn't help his friend drown, or maybe didn't want to help his friend to save his friend who was drowning. And so then Phil bought him a ticket and invited him to the show, and then called him out on stage. And like, again, none of these are true.
Okay.
That's a great story.
Because that would have been harsh.
And that one I could see how it would spread, where it's like, invite someone to a show and then sing these lyrics directly to them, and you could the guy would be terrified. That drowning story, which is funny because when I was a teenager, there's a really popular song called Clumsy from Our Lady Peace. I don't know if you know that song. And there was a rumor going around that the lead singer witnessed someone drowning and couldn't save him. And that was what that song was about. I don't know if
actually
that's
he
true,
was the guy.
but it's just weird that there's these two hit songs that were like a decade apart and they both have this weird drowning urban legend. Like, to me, it's just like people looking for meaning. And this is pre-internet too. Before you could just DM a celebrity and that celebrity be like, no, that's not true. There was another story that a man had attacked his wife, and then later Phil got to see that man drown, which again is all of these drowning stories. So it's like this man attacks a wife, and then Phil just so happens to be in the neighborhood when this guy is drowning. That's kind of
killing another man.
And the previous story, if Phil had seen a guy witness his friend drowning, why didn't Phil step in? I get why the friend didn't step in, but where was Phil that he had a vantage point that he saw someone else see their friend drown or see a guy drown? Why couldn't Phil intervene?
Exactly.
Doesn't make any sense. Then there's this story of there's this concept that whatever story you tell this story where when the story climaxes, that's when the drums come in. So there's this urban legend that whatever story that you tell, like a horror story or a scary story at a campfire, you tell it while it's this ominous buildup. I saw what you did. I saw it with my own two eyes. You can wipe off that grin. I know where you've been. And then all of a sudden the drums come in. And that's what makes it kind of like a fun campfire story. If anyone has a drum kit around the campfire, that's a good thing to do. Also, this interesting trend that's been popping up every New Year's Eve, where people will give the timestamp if you want the drum solo from In the Air Tonight to happen right at midnight on New Year's Eve. I've never done this before. I'm going to do it this year. Maybe we'll do it live on the channel. That you're supposed to play the song at like, what, I don't know, 11:58 or something at a certain time, and then right when the ball drops on New Year's Day is when the drums come in. So let's talk about another incident here. There's another story that has a little bit more validity to it. And that is the Top of the Pops incident. So in 1981, Phil was invited to play on Top of the Pops, which is a big deal. And he performed In the Air Tonight, and he also performed I Missed Again. So the story goes, and this is a very common story, and I first read about this back in the late 90s in a book that Ray Coleman wrote. It was a definitive biography, but he actually got quite a lot of things wrong. I was looking for that book, by the way. I think it must be buried in the basement somewhere. I'll have to dig it up. It was a fun read for sure. But anyway, Ray talks about this, and it's all over the press, really. You can find this story where Phil is performing. He's playing a Prophet synthesizer. He's not playing a piano. I thought it had been a piano with a closed lid, but at the time he was playing a Prophet synthesizer, and there's a paint bucket next to him. A lot of people think that there was this reference, and people think this to be very true, that was an intentional reference to his first wife, who allegedly had an affair with a painter or an interior decorator. And so because In the Air Tonight or Face Value is about his marriage falling apart and is considered to be a divorce album, that it would make sense for when he performs In the Air Tonight, which could be a song that he writes to his wife who cheated on him, or that he's writing to the man who had an affair with his wife. That could be another theory or another urban legend. So on Top of the Pops, the idea was that Phil intentionally put a paint bucket with a paintbrush coming out of it next to his piano while he was performing, as this subtle little indicator to, I know what you did, and this is like a little slight. And actually his first wife mentioned even recently, I think it was in 2016 in the press, about how that really hurt her, and then that public display of their divorce was inappropriate and not very professional. So I always thought, because Ray talks about this in his book, I always thought that this was the definitive story, was that regardless what the song's about, that this performance was a slight to his wife and the man who she had an affair with, allegedly. Yeah. But Phil addressed this in his book. And so here's Phil's side of the story. And we don't really know what's true, because I do believe that there would be, his book wouldn't be 100% true, because he wrote it himself, right?
Yeah.
So it would be certainly, I don't think, he doesn't always paint himself in a good picture. That's why I really loved about the book, that he was forthcoming with his mistakes. So I really love that about his autobiography. But he talked about this specific Top of the Pops incident. And here's what he said. he said that he was going to just perform with a keyboard because the drums, there was no drummer. It was just a solo performance. And so the drum machine and the drum solo, and I believe even background vocals, were all played to a tape. So they were all a backing track. As far as I can see, I didn't see a band anywhere there. And so it's just him and this Prophet synthesizer. And so a stagehand was going to grab just a traditional keyboard stand. But Phil was afraid that, he mentioned that it would look like Duran Duran, that it would look like a traditional synth pop band or a 80s synth pop artist. And Phil wanted to be seen as a little bit more of a serious artist, perhaps a little bit more Motown-y. And so he didn't want like to be standing with a traditional keyboard stand. And so he suggested, and I don't know where they found this, but they grabbed one of those like sawhorses, you know, those like foldable tables. In Canada, they're called Mastercraft, but I don't really see them very much anymore. They make them out of plastic, but they're like these foldable tables. I think Phil used this on another late night show, actually. I believe it was Johnny Carson or Letterman or Leno or something that he used this fold-up thing. It's kind of cool. So they put a synthesizer on this fold-up thing and he sits on it. And then because it's kind of industrial, they put this milk crate and they put the drum machine on an old box and then he grabs a paint can from backstage. Now, I really don't know why there's a paint can, but it's a set, so maybe that makes sense. The whole set looks kind of dark and ominous and kind of industrial looking. And so basically Phil's defense is there was no intentional slight to the interior decorator, that it was meant to just look like a warehouse. It was meant to look industrial. Phil didn't want it to look polished. Phil just wanted it to look kind of raw and rough. And so on one hand, he can say that the slight was, he never thought of it. And on the other hand, you could say that, well, maybe he's lying. He doesn't want to
because you
be
can
seen
see
as a mean
why
guy,
he would
because
do
that
that.
would have been kind of a mean thing to do, even though it would have been over most people's heads at the time. Honestly, I don't know where I fall with it, but I'm kind of a Phil Collins apologist, hence the channel. I kind of side with Phil because of all of the other industrial props. And I really understand why he wouldn't want to stand up at a keyboard, that it would look kind of like an 80s synth pop band. And so to put it on this, like, you know, Phil has always curbed the norm when it comes to rock stars. And so to put it and to kind of create this industrial warehouse looking set, and then to throw in more props, Phil did it on the Both Sides tour. He also did it in music videos like That's All. They did a behind the scenes thing in Invisible Touch. This kind of raw behind the scenes look and wearing torn jeans and old t-shirts is very common for Phil. So I kind of side with him to thinking that it wasn't, the paint bucket wasn't an intentional slight.
He's the artist though, so he would know.
That it was just putting together this set design. Now, let's talk about the true meaning of the song. The true meaning of the song is nothing. Phil has said many times that it was 99.9% improvised while sitting down at the piano or the keyboard. He had this drum machine going on a loop. And it's what Jeff Tweedy from the band Wilco calls mumble lyrics. And basically what happens, and tons of songwriters do this, you start playing a few chords and you come up with a melody. And then you start to come up with the phrasing for that song and what we would just know as a hook today or a melody. But it's really important that the lyrics fit perfectly into the meter, into the phrasing of the song. So instead of shoehorning pre-written lyrics or poetry into this new melody, instead you just allow the melody to dictate the lyrics.
The lyrics, exactly.
The melody to dictate what type of words or what type of sounding words would fit in there.
And that is something that I preach about, like, that is the right way to make a song. If you have the melody, if the melody is amazing enough, haunting enough for you to just place the lyrics right after, that would make the best song. I believe that is what Bee Gees is doing. I believe that is what Quincy Jones with Michael Jackson did. I believe that a lot of great songwriters, they come up with the melody first and then the lyrics right after. I believe that is the right way to write a song. So exactly what he is explaining, and Phil Collins, one of the best musicians, he even does that. So if you are an artist, don't come with the lyrics in the beginning, because you will try to make the lyrics fit in something that just isn't there. Even if the lyrics are amazing, the song won't be captivating enough. So I do agree with everything that he's saying. So let's do this. Let's go back. Let's go.
Maybe it's a short word. Maybe it's 3 short words that make up a sentence. Maybe it's a word that can be drug on for a long time. But the point is that this type of songwriting is melody first, lyrics second,
Yeah.
as opposed to early Genesis, where Peter Gabriel would have maybe gone off and written some lyrics and then writing the music to it. But melody first is something we see with Home by the Sea, and we hear with No Son of Mine, is that you improvise something that No Son of Mine fits into this melody. Dreaming of a Home by the Sea fits as the end of this certain melody that Tony and Mike were playing, and Phil comes up with this melody, and then a song is built around Home by the Sea, or a song is built around No Son of Mine. We know Mumble Lyrics actually made it onto an album in the song Sussudio. Sussudio isn't a word, but Sussudio worked, and it was a made-up word, and then he couldn't actually find a word to replace it, and he was just bold enough to go with it. And so Mumble Lyrics has been a part of Phil Collins' career. In fact, if you want to hear some mumble versions of songs, you just have to go to Spotify or Apple Music and go to the deluxe versions of the albums like Face Value and Hello, I Must Be Going and But Seriously that they released in 2016. You can hear Phil just singing a melody like he does live on Throwing It All Away.
Wow.
You can hear Phil singing a melody or mumble lyrics on Do You Remember, Hanging Long Enough, Don't Let Him Steal Your Heart Away. There's tons of examples where Phil is just blabbing because he's found a melody that he likes, and then we will then shoehorn a lyric into that concrete melody.
Amazing though.
So that's how In the Air Tonight worked, is that he was just saying words that fit with this melody he had in mind, that fit with this chords, saying words that felt ominous and dark. And that's how we get In the Air Tonight. Does it have a meaning after the fact?
Nah.
Some artists, when they're songwriting, will stumble upon a few lyrics like No Son of Mine, and then understand that there's this brooding intensity in the music that Mike and Tony were making on No Son of Mine, and then that can really dictate the lyrics for the rest of the song that you create. It's a harsh relationship between a father and son, and so that will happen quite a lot. And certainly the ominous nature of the music of In the Air Tonight would have helped dictate the type of lyrics. I think it's something really what I love about Phil is that it's one of the reasons people don't like Phil, I think, is because he has always curbed the trend of the rock star. He's never fit that mold. He's never played that role of a rock star. And I think mumble lyrics and improvising lyrics is something that most songwriters do. And I think it's kind of a magician's secret. It's a musician's secret that they don't really appreciate Phil talking about. But the fact of the matter is that most songwriters do it this way and assign a meaning later. So then when the press asks them, what is this song about? They give out this beautiful meaning of this song. The origin of the title or the hook in the song may have come just from
by the melody. Yeah.
Phil just spilling the beans and saying, "Yeah, I just made it up on the spot." I think that's one of the things that other rock stars don't like about Phil is that he gives away their best secrets. So I'm curious. You tell me, have I missed an urban legend? There's got to be more out there. What's an urban legend of In the Air Tonight, or maybe another one of Phil's songs that you've heard? Please let me know in the comments below. What a great song, though, by the way.
Amazing song.
Who cares what it's about? Thanks for watching.
Exactly. Amazing song. But he brings up a good conversation point, though, because I didn't understand it from the beginning. Like, why would the writers hate Phil Collins? Because I feel like that is the best way to write a song. But now that I'm thinking about it, a song like Someone Like You by what's her name again? Someone Like You by Adele. Like, what if it's just a improvisation of a song? Like, the song, she didn't really have a next, and it's just a song, and the melody brought the lyrics just from the thin of the air, you know, and it doesn't really have a meaning. So that is why then writers would not like Phil Collins, because it rips out the meaning out of the song. So that is a good statement by this guy. And again, this guy's channel is called Everything Phil Collins. So please, if you guys can subscribe to him and give your 2 cents and just thank him for this video, that will be a great pleasure. So what did you guys write in the comments or in the live chat?